Okay, so what is better, HMIs or tungsten gel full CTB? What's got the better color quality? We're gonna find that out today. Now I already know what you're thinking. Tungsten by itself is far superior in color quality to an HMI, but when you start putting gel on it, you get some shifts and you kind of lose some of the color quality of it. I'm gonna put a 1K up. I'm gonna put some fresh CTB on it, full CTB. We're gonna record that and then compare it to another HMI, 1200 HMI that is daylight, and see what the color is and how they compare. Okay, so I got the 1K mold Richardson set up. Nice fresh gel straight off the roll here, just so you know. And then the 1200. So we're gonna be using I'm gonna be using my Seconic C800U to measure this, so we get the most accurate reading. Okay, let's get this going. We'll let it warm up for a little bit. First time, every time with the Hondas. All right, so we got it on. We'll let this warm up for just a second. Doesn't take long to warm up. I'm gonna be in full flood mode for this. Taking it away, about a foot away from the unit. There we go. We are getting about 5600 on the dot, so the gel is perfect for putting this into daylight mode for the tungsten. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'm going to do the other HMI. I'm going to save both, and we're going to go back and analyze this in detail. Power on. Striking. All right, we'll let this warm up for a bit, probably about 5 minutes. These take a little bit longer. She's warmed up quite a bit. Let's do a test here. About the same distance, about a foot. So we are getting a little bit bluer on this, about 6,000. Let me go ahead and drop in a lens just so we would get the closest as possible to what we would be shooting with, because usually there would be a lens in here. So I'm going to drop in the stipple lens because that's the one I usually use most of the time. It's just full flood. And this bulb is used, it's not brand new. It's probably got at least 100 hours, maybe 150, so it does have some wear. When you get a new bulb, usually they're more towards the bluer side. And as they age, they come down in temperature. They start to warm up every hour. It warms up like 1 Kelvin or half a Kelvin, I believe, I forget. So here we go again. I'm gonna go a little farther this time. So now we're getting about 5,500 there, so that's a better, closer temperature than what we were. So the lens does have some effect somewhat. Sometimes I run it without the lens, but it's only when I need absolutely all the power, and then usually I'm bouncing it at that point anyways. So I'm gonna save this as well. All right, now let's go back and analyze these in detail. I'm gonna go through the spectrum, the CRI, the SSI, the TLCI, and the TLMF, and really see how it comes down to each individual parameter. Now we're back at base. Taking a look here. This is the main overview of both the lights. As you can see, the color temps are within pretty good range. Anything plus or minus 100, 150 is not too bad, so they're pretty much both bang on. As you can see, there's a little bit of delta UV shift in both of them. A little bit of magenta in both. It's kind of calling for a little bit of green on both, but it's not calling for an actual green filter, so they're not too much magenta. Usually when you start getting to 0.006 or so, then that's when you kind of require a filter. So the ARRI 1200 is kind of close, but it's only a third of what it would have to be to get to a required green filter on the light itself. Moving over to the spectrum here, you can see the spectrums are quite different. I'm kind of surprised at the tungsten spectrum. As you can see, we're losing a lot in the actual blues, greens, and yellows with that filter, and just keeping the high-end reds and oranges. Usually a spectrum for the tungsten is kind of almost diagonal, straight up from corner to corner. So that filter's really kind of killing off those blues and greens in the spectrum. The spectrum for the ARRI 1200 is pretty nice, pretty even. It does have the spikes, you know, in certain places, but that's kind of what HMIs are. They're like that. But overall, it's a good spectrum. All right, now let's move over to the CRI here. So the CRIs are pretty close, but there is some differences between them. If we start with the tungsten 1K, you can see the overall it's pretty high, but the main ones like the R9 here is a 78, that's kind of low. Anything under an 80 is not very good. The R12 is okay. The R13, 14, 15 is okay. So really the only thing I would be concerned about is the R9, which is the most important one for skin tones and whatnot. On the other side here for the HMI, we can see we have this R9 of 90, which is pretty good. Everything else is pretty much above 90, it looks like. An overall score of almost 98, so pretty good CRI for the 1200. I'd be a little concerned about the 1K if I was lighting some food or something that was very colorful, because that R9 does affect a lot of the colors on camera. Once you get in post, they start shifting, and yellows start looking like greens and whatnot. Reds start looking orange or green, you know, it shifts. Kind of a -1 there for the tungsten with the gel. Moving over to the TM30. Both the TM30s are pretty good. They're pretty spot on. 97 RF for the tungsten and an RG of 101. So it looks like we're just pushing 1 point into oversaturation of some colors, but that's nothing really crazy, nothing really bad. And for the 1200, it's 97 for the overall RF, for the fidelity, and the gamut's 100. So both good there, good color. Now moving over to the TLCI TLMF, as you can see, the 1K overall score of a 95 on the TLCI, that's pretty good, nice and high. And then for the TLMF, I compared it just to the ARRI 1200 itself, and we're getting an 83. So that's pretty good. It's not awful, but it's not great. It's just kind of okay. And then for the TLCI for the ARRI 1200, 99, which is great, and then the 83 compared to the 1K again. So the ARRI is slightly beating out the 1K for daylight mode so far. And then moving over to the SSI, you see the 1K mole had an SSI of 95 when compared to the CIE D55, which is basically daylight 5500. You can ignore that other SSI 56, that's compared to tungsten, but we're not comparing it to that, so that's just, it was there, so I couldn't get rid of it. And then an SSI for the 1200 of 94, so both really good. Anything above a 90 for SSI is really good. And it looks like the SSI for the 1K is slightly better at 1 point over, so you know, some of these measuring devices are better for one light than the others, so it's always good to compare different ones because you get an overall range. And then I did another one here. I just did the 1K mole with the gel compared to just the sun straight up outside, and that had an SSI 95, so holding up to the sun, if you were trying to match these lights up, would be pretty easy to do. So overall, I was pretty happy with how the 1K holds up with the gel for most of these measurements. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about is, again, that CRI at 78.2. But for everything else, I mean, I've used it before. I use tungsten all the time with gels, use them with HMIs, and they're usually pretty fine, but I just wanted to do a really detailed test to see how close or how far it is, and they're pretty close. It's just, you know, the spectrums are slightly quite different, so it depends on what you're trying to match or what you're trying to light. If you're trying to light a lot of food or something, you might go with the 1200, or you might go with the 1K with no gel and just shoot it all tungsten, so you don't have to worry about that shift with the gel itself, because each gel has shift, and over time the shifts get worse as the gel ages and as the UV light goes through it. So good thing to keep in mind. If you guys want to see any other videos or any other kind of lighting tests, let me know in the comments. We'll see you next week.